Hello, my name's Linda Martin and I'm somebody who plays around with eggshells. Now, as you can see in front of us, we've got three little people. I wonder if you can guess who they are. One of the things in England that we have is a story about Robin Hood and his merry men. Now, you've probably seen the films, the cartoons on television, and I think one of them had Robin Hood as a fox. Well, Robin Hood was somebody who lived in Sherwood Forest, and he had friends with him, and as you can see here, we have Robin Hood. This one is Maid Marian, and here we have Friar Tuck, and today I'm going to show you how to make these out of eggshells. So the first thing that we need to do is work out exactly what we're going to need to make these. We'll start by making Robin Hood because I think he's a very important person. So we'll take Maid Marian and we'll take Friar Tuck and we'll put those out of the way for now, and then perhaps later on we can sort out making those. So we'll start off with a duck egg. Now this is one that's already blown. It's got a hole in the end and a little hole at this end, and later on I'll show you how to blow an egg. Now then, we start off first of all with the duck egg. So that's number one, that's the most important thing. And then to make Robin Hood we need some very thick wool. This is called chunky knit wool, and this is something that your mum or somebody else in the family may have lying around, but this is going to be used for Robin's hair. So we need some wool, dark brown I think, and he's got quite long hair as well because they didn't have barbers in the forest. The other thing that we're going to need is some green felt. Okay, now I've already cut this felt into two shapes, and let's move Robin out of the way just a little bit so we can see the shape properly. Now this is for his hat, and you can see on Robin, can you see where this little bit here is pointing upwards so that we can tuck the feather inside? Now the way that we do that is we have a little piece here at the end which is straight, and that is going to fold up like so. So we need to cut two of these shapes from felt. We'll pop those to one side. So that's your two pieces of felt, the thick glue, the thick wool, and then obviously we're going to need a little feather for his hat. So that's that. Now around the top of his little outfit we've got some green cord. Now you can use a little bit of string or you could use some wool. This is called rat tail satin, so it's quite shiny. So we need a little bit of that, and you can see he's holding a bow and arrow. Now this is a long bow, so what I had to do was have a look through my books and things and discover the kind of shape that the long bow is, because it's different to other types of bows like crossbows and that sort of thing. So then I had to decide how to make it, and I took some brown card, and you can see the shape. It's sort of wide in the middle and then it tapers outwards or downwards and upwards. So that's going to be his bow. Now then, you need a little bit of something like fishing line. I don't think you can just about see that. So fishing line, or you can buy things called invisible thread. Now I know somewhere I've got some invisible thread, but I can't find it, probably because it's invisible. Okay, now paints. We need some flesh coloured paint and some dark green paint. This is to paint his face and his body, and also to paint the little hands. Now the hands I've cut from card, and then I've just painted them with the flesh paint to match his face, so it's all the same colour. Now, if you remember, when you look at television programmes and you look at cartoons, the characters don't have 4 fingers and a thumb on their hands. They only have about 3, maybe 4 fingers. So all I've done is a very, very simple shape here with the 3 fingers. So we need 2 of these in the flesh coloured card, or you can paint it to match the face. Now then, as well as this, we're going to need some equipment, but it's usually something that everybody has got at home. So we need a nice flat paintbrush, because that makes it easier for painting. We also need some glue. Now, we want a glue that's going to be really, really sticky for when we do things like putting the cord around the neck and perhaps gluing down the hat. So I'm using something called Yoo-hoo glue, which I've put into a little bottle so I can use it more easily. But also we need something that we can move around a little bit, so I'm using some thick glue. And this is, you can see how thick it is. It doesn't want to come out of the jar at all. And to put that onto the egg, I'm going to use just an ordinary toothpick. So if you can go and have a look for all the bits and pieces when we've finished doing this, you might be able to create your own Robin Hood, or even some other characters, who knows. I've also made some little decals for the faces. You can see this one is for Robin and for Friar Tuck. Now you can also draw these onto your egg, it might be easier for you. And this one is for Maid Marian. You see she's got really long lashes because she's a girl, okay? Now then, when you're doing faces, you want to have nice smiley faces. Okay, so they look nice and friendly. You don't want miserable faces unless you're doing something really grumpy. And when you're doing the eyes, you can see they have to be quite big, and the black bit, the pupil, has to be almost as big as the actual eye. Now, the reason for that is to make it look friendlier, and also a tiny, tiny little white dot, just a little highlight in the same place on each eye, so that it actually looks as if it's alive. If you look at cartoon characters, you'll see they have lots and lots of different bits on the eyes, but there's always a little dot just to make it look more real. Okay, and if you do put in eyebrows, just make them nice and high up. That makes them also look friendlier. So, shall we start? And what I've done is I've already prepared my duck egg, and I've painted the top half of the egg with flesh colour. Now you can see that's not straight, but that doesn't matter, because what I'm now going to do is paint the bottom half of the egg. And we always work, when we're doing something like this, oh, you know, I nearly forgot something important. A little stand to put him on. You don't really need one, but it's nice to have something like that. Or you can cut a piece of card and glue him onto that as well. But that's something that's quite handy. So let's have a look. So we need some dark green paint. So let's get the paints, give it a good shake up, and then that's nicely mixed together. So then what I'm going to do is carefully dip my brush in. Now when you turn the egg, you get more of a straight line, but it doesn't really matter if it's not totally straight. So turn the egg, and as you're turning it, the brush is moving. Almost certainly you're going to need 2 coats of paint, because although this is a nice thick paint, you see, in some parts of the egg it looks a bit thin. Do you know what you can do to make things quicker? Because I can't stand waiting for paint to dry, glue to dry, things like that. So what I do is I get my hairdryer out. Oops, you can see that's not terribly straight, but it doesn't matter. Some of this is going to be hidden by his hair anyway. So let's very quickly get some paint on the rest of it. And then I'm going to go over again with the brush, trying to smooth out all of the thick areas. This is only the first coat, remember, so we don't have to be too particular. It's when we come to the second coat, that's when we need to make sure everything is nice and smooth and neat. Because the neater you can get it, the better it's going to look when we're finished. Okay, so that's the first coat. So we'll leave that and we'll come back to that in a minute when that's dried off. So while we're waiting for the paint to dry on Robin's outfit, I'm going to show you how to blow an egg. Now you need a sharp needle, and this is a hen's egg. And in England we have mainly brown hen's eggs. I know you can get some really nice white ones in America. So what I'm going to do is pop the needle into the bottom of the egg, and I'm going to push really, really hard. Oh, this is a strong one. Okay, you might have to get some help to do this if you're not very good with sharp things. And then I'm just going to gently crunch away some of the shell so that I make a little opening. Try to make it fairly small. This is the hole where all of the egg is going to come out so that you can use it. Use the shell. And you can also, of course, do some baking. Oh, but do the egg first, okay? Because that's much more fun. And on the other end, I'm pushing really, really hard. There we are. So that's made just one tiny hole. I'm not going to make that one any bigger, okay? Because I don't want to have too big a hole in the top to hide if I'm doing something with it. Now, oh look, you can see it's starting to come out already, but it needs a little bit of help. And also what we need to do is make sure we have a bowl underneath. We're going to pop a toothpick up inside the egg, wriggle it around a tiny bit. Don't just wriggle it up and down, don't wriggle it from side to side, because otherwise you might make a bigger hole than you need. Now, there's two ways of doing this. One of them requires a lot of puff, and you have to be careful, and you must make sure, of course, that the egg's properly washed first before you do this. But you put your mouth over the top of the blowhole and very, very gently blow. Okay, now I'm not going to show you how to do that right now, just in case I make a mess and it goes all over me. So I have a little pump that I use, and this, can you hear it's filling with air and pumping out when I squeeze it? So what I'm going to do is pop that over the top opening and gently, gently squeeze. And as I squeeze, can you see? All of the white comes out first because that's the thinner part of the shell. So just to be on the safe side, I'm going to try to poke up through the hole again and break up the yolk, which is the yellow bit, because as soon as that comes, it's almost like in a little bag. It's called a yolk sac, and when the bag has been broken inside the egg, it allows everything to flow through much more easily. So let's see if that's done the job. Make sure I'm holding it over the bowl. Look, you can see there's quite a bit coming out now. Just hold it gently in your hand and puff. There, look, now you can see the yolk coming through. Whoop. Make sure you keep the bowl underneath, won't you? Okay, now that sounds like everything has come out. You just see there's a tiny little bit left on the edge of it. Let's just take that off, and there's your scrambled egg for breakfast. Now, you don't really want to leave all of the insides messy, so what you need to do is fill that with water and you can use the soapy water, and you can hold it underneath the water so that the water goes into the holes, and then when it's full up, give it a real good shake, and then just blow through again with the little pump or with your mouth. So that's how you can blow the egg. You can't use it straight away usually. You really need to give it time to dry. So make sure that you put it somewhere where the air can get through underneath. So something like an egg box. And here's one where the, whoops, there we go. You see I've got some of the eggs draining on there. So you can pop it upside down like that in the egg box and leave it to dry. And then once you've done that, you can use it for one of your projects. Well, I cheated and used my hairdryer to dry the paint. So now I'm going to do my second coat, and you'll see what a difference it makes. There we are. See, that's covering much better. Sometimes you may even need to go back and do 3, but we'll just see if we can manage with 2 for now. There we are. See, that's much thicker now. Don't worry if you go a little bit offline and if it's not perfectly straight, because you're going to put some cording on and that will hide the edge between the 2 colours. So I'm not too worried about that. Whoops. If you brush it too much, you'll start to show the egg from underneath, which is not really a great idea. Alright, so I shall go and give that another go with the hairdryer, and then we'll come back and start doing the fun bit. So now we have our egg nicely painted up, and the next thing we're going to do is just pop this little bit of braid around the edge of the neckline. So let's get some glue. Let's just pop the egg down for a second and make sure that's in properly. Okay, now we'll make the join at the back where his hair is going to cover it. So we'll start to pop some glue on. Try to get that in a nice straight line. And because this glues quite quickly, we're going to just do a little bit. Press that down so that it's nicely stuck, and then we'll come around again. There we are. If you don't have one of these glue bottles, you can always use a toothpick. Just something that doesn't put too much glue on in one go. So you don't really want to see glue sticking out from underneath your cording. Oh, I'm at the end. Right. There we are. The other thing that you will need as well are some nice sharp scissors. And these little ones are great for that. So I just slide the scissor point underneath there and snip. Oh, this is really thick, this cord, so you might have to be a bit careful with that. Okay, now then, it's beginning to look more like a Robin Hood, isn't it? Except that he needs hair. Now we have the thick wool. We'll decide how long we want the hair to be, but we don't really want to glue wool around that top bit of the head because that's wasting it. So what we'll do is we'll take it up to about there. So let's just take my pencil and we'll say, leave a bit on the top. No one knows that Robin Hood is bald underneath his hat. So we'll just do a little circle on the top. And then we can start to glue the hair on. So we decide which is the front. Where do we cut the cord? There's where we cut the cord. So this is going to be the front, and we're going to glue some hair. Got to leave a bit there for his face to show through. So all we're going to do is take the hair just a little bit above my pencil line, and for this we're going to use the really thick glue. Okay, so let's bring that here. Ooh, look at that, it really is thick. Now let's put some glue on here. Oh gosh, it's so thick it's hardly moving. And we'll roll it down the side of the face. The best thing about this glue, apart from the fact you can get really, really messy with it, is that it doesn't stick straight away, but it holds things in position while it's sticking. So let's do that down to there. Okay. If you do get it all over your fingers, what you can do is just rub your fingers together and it just rolls off. So now I'm going to start gluing my hair, and we can always give him a proper haircut later. Alright, so we're going to make it about that length. So if you want to, you can cut all of these pieces before you start to glue them on. But if not, you just start all the way around and glue them on. One by one. Keep them nice and close together because you don't want him to have any bald patches. There we go. Sometimes when you're sticking them on you do get the glue on your fingers, but you need to press it in firmly so that everything sticks properly. There we are. In fact, what you can do to save cutting it every single time is you can loop it. This will save time. So loop at the bottom all the way up to the top, loop it back down again. Now I'm running out of glue, so I need to put some more glue on next. So let's pop that up to there. Now the back of the head is going to be covered a lot by the hat, but just to be on the safe side, let's just pop some more glue on and take the wool a little bit higher up still. Okay, you ready? So just hold it down and loop the loop all the way up, all the way back. See, this is quicker, isn't it? Sometimes when you're working with something you discover a quick and easy way to do it. Always remember it for next time round so that it saves you some time. So we'll be doing similar things when we make Maid, Marian and Friar Tuck. Friar Tuck doesn't use anywhere near as much wool because he's got a big bald patch in the middle of his head. Go a little bit more. You have to also be aware of how far round you're going. You don't want to go too far round, otherwise you'll cover up his face. Lovely and gooey, this glue. So when you decide to have a go at blowing your own eggs, you'll probably find that you'll want to do more and more of them. Because I know when I started doing egg art, every time I was going to use an egg, I used to blow it so that I had as many eggs as I could get. And my boys used to say to me, "Oh no, Mum, not scrambled eggs again. Oh, not omelette again." Now what I'm going to do here, because the egg tapers upwards, sometimes you can't get everything in a straight line like that, so I'm going to cut it there, and then I'm just going to fill in with some slightly shorter lengths, just filling in the gap. Like so. This is going to be at the back anyway, so it won't really matter too much, but you can see now you can't see his head through the wool, which is what we're aiming for. So now we can start doing the looping again. I think we should be okay doing that. And looping up. And oops. I said didn't want to stay put. Let's just cut that. I've nearly run out of wool. Oh, I just need a little bit more. Let me have a look, see what I can find. Okay, do you think that will be enough? I do. Right, let's find the end and cut some more, just to be sure. Okay, there we are. So just that tiny little bit to fill in there. And just snip that off. And another little piece there. Now let's check and see how much we've left for the face. Oh, I can just see, ooh, let's just pop a little bit more glue there. And just do one more length. There we are. If you just roll the glue off the toothpick, you'll find it easier that way. Okay, that's that. Now, what I'm going to suggest we do next is something that you've probably never done before, and that's to give an egg a haircut. So, we're going to cut through the loops. Now, I don't know that Robin Hood was very fussy about his hairdos, but we'll try to give him a reasonable cut. So let's have a look. So let's just snip a little bit off there. Some of these aren't quite as long as others. Don't go too mad, otherwise you'll have to glue all the hair back on again if you cut too much off. Let's see if it looks the same length at each side. Oops, there we are. Okay, what do you think of that? Do you think that will do? I think so. So let's just tidy the bits out of the way. I think what I'll do as well is I'll just snip that little bit there off because it's a bit bulky. There we are. So you see that's going to be hidden anyway by his hat. So I think that's the next thing we've got to do, don't you? So let's pop that to one side. Let's use my egg box again, and we'll pop him there to dry. Okay, now the hat. This is a little bit more fiddly, and I had to hide the feathers because one of my dogs loves feathers and she runs off with them, so I had to make sure they were out of her way. otherwise she will have stolen them. Okay, now we have the two halves. You see, look, I've got glue on my fingers again, so I'm just going to roll those together. Just peel off the bits. That's it. If you don't mind getting messy, this is great fun. That's better. Okay, so I've got my two pieces of felt, and I'm going to put some glue. I'm going to use the strong stuff now that I used to put the cording on. I'm going to put some glue all the way up here on the inside, and then all the way down to here, and then I'm going to leave this bit unglued, and I'll show you why in a second. So let's get my glue bottle again. There it is. So we're just going to put a little bit of glue all the way up that side. And then just squeeze together gently. Make sure that's stuck. And then we'll open up this side, and we're going to put glue all the way down to there, but not that straight bit. Okay, so we're just going to squeeze that together. I'm just going to make sure that that shape is the same, so I'm just going to snip that level. Let's turn it over and make sure that side's the same. That's it. And hopefully that is going to fit over the top of my Robin Hood. Yes. But it's the wrong shape. So what we have to do now is we're going to fold the fabric from that corner all the way up to the top of the straight bit. Now this is a little bit fiddly, you might need a little bit of help doing this just to hold it in position, but if you squeeze it together like that with your thumb, the felt should hold in place. But just to be on the safe side, what I'm going to do is pop some glue along here, and I'm going to fold that down and hold it against the main bit of the hat. There we are, so that's now held in place. Okay, so having done it on that side, of course we've got to do it on this side now. So let's fold it over again. This time's easier because you can see the other side of the felt, so you know whereabouts you're going to fold. Okay, that's good. So once again, pop some glue on. Like so. Ooh, that's lifting a little bit, so I'm going to have to hold it tight. Squeeze it tightly so that the glue soaks into the felt. There we are. So that's my little Robin Hood hat. Now then, oops, that's just coming away a tiny bit there. If it hasn't stuck properly first time round, don't worry about it. A little bit more glue and that should do it. There we are. Now that goes pointed end towards the front, which means that our feather has to go towards the back. So while the glue is still, let's just open that up a tiny bit. So what I'm going to do is just pop a little squeeze of glue down underneath the brim of the hat, and then I'm going to pop the feather in there, and squeeze that tightly as well. Now I'm going to leave that hat to dry for a little while, but I think you'll agree that's quite cool. And when you open it up, that's going to sit on top of Robin's head, like so. Quite cool, that. Right, so that's the head done, the hat done. So the next thing to look at is the longbow. Now this is a bit fiddly. I need to find my needle again. This is the one that I used for poking the hole in the hen's egg before I blew it. So what I need to do is make a little hole. That's probably not a good idea to do it against your finger, so you'll probably end up spiking yourself. So what I'm going to do is pop it on top of something like so, and I'm going to push down to make just a small hole. Hopefully that's going to be big enough. So that's my hole at one end. There we are. And then I'm going to do exactly the same at the other end. And this is the bit where we thread the string of the bow through. Now I've already knotted one end of my fishing line, and I'm going to pop that through the hole. And just to be on the safe side, I'm going to pop a little tiny bit of glue just underneath where the knot is going to go. Okay. Actually, I've put rather a lot of glue. Let's just take some of that off with my finger. I'm going to hold that while it sets. Now, the other thing that I've done is I've cut a much longer piece of fishing line than I'm actually going to need. The reason being that when I poke that through the hole at the bottom and pull it tight, can you see what happens? It curves the bow, and it also makes it easier for tying the knot in the bottom. So what I'm going to do now is pull that really tight and then make another knot so that it holds it in position on the bow. Let's just make sure. Let's see where I want the knot to go. Take it that little bit higher. I think about there. So I'll pull the knot tight, and then I'm just going to do another knot just to make sure it doesn't drop through the hole. There we are. And then we'll have another little bit of glue just to hold everything in position. Let's just push that into the glue. There we are. And there's your longbow. You can curl it a little bit with your fingers if you want to. And then the next thing is just to snip. I won't snip it right back just yet because the glue's still setting. There we are. Let's just move the bits. So there is Robin's longbow. So he's almost ready. Now then, I mentioned before that I'd made some little decals for the faces. So what I'm going to do is take my decal. Now if you want to, you don't have to have these. There we are. But if you want to, you can use felt pens and you can draw your own faces on. Alright, that gives you lots more scope, so you can do, if you want a snarly Robin Hood, you can do a really grumpy face, or you can use the decals, copy cartoon characters, things like that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pop that into some water, This is what's called a water slide decal, and what happens is the decal curls up because the water's absorbing into the backing paper, and it will curl up and then it'll start to flatten out again. And once it flattens out, it means that the water's absorbed properly. This is going to take a little while because my water went cold. It's easier to use warm water. So we'll just give that a minute and then we'll come back to it. So now the decal has had a chance to actually come off the backing paper. Whoops, there it is on my fingers. Okay, so you can see what's happened. The backing paper has slid off completely, and there we have a little smiley face for Robin. So we'll pop that in position, and then what I have to do with this, oops, make sure it's not too high up, otherwise we'll lose his eyes under his hairdo or under his hat. Just going to press that down gently, and just to be sure I'm going to use my hairdryer, and I'm just going to heat it gently so that that sticks onto the egg. You could of course use a little bit of glue underneath to stick it on with, but there's his little face all sorted. And then what we can do is pop the hat on. Yes, we can still see his face, look. How about that? Right, so I'll just very quickly use my hairdryer to heat that, and then we'll come back and put the hat in position and everything else that we need to do. Right, now we can get the hat glued into position. So I'm going to use the really thick glue again, and I'm going to get a great big dollop, and I'm going to pop that inside the hat on the edge. Whoops, it doesn't want to come off the toothpick. On the edges, inside it, so that when I stick it down in position onto Robin's head, it's not going to go anywhere. There we are. That might just be enough, but we'd have to check it later on to make sure. So, come on Robin, let's put your hat on. And there we go. Got it at an angle. Make sure that his hair is fully covered at the back, because we don't want any bald patches showing. There we go. That looks okay, doesn't it? So now all he needs is something to hang on to his longbow with. So we'll use the other glue for this. We'll take one of his hands and we'll pop that like so. Oops. There we are. Press that down firmly. And the same on the other side. Oops. There we are. Pop that on there. Make sure they're about level. And that's that. Now then, depending on which hand you want the bow to go in, just slide it underneath. Maybe a little bit more glue. Pop a little bit of glue in the middle of the bow so that it glues onto, and on the other side perhaps a little bit, so that when we slide it underneath the hand it's going to glue on both sides, like so. There, how about that? And then all we need to do, hold that steady. That's it. And then you can either cut a circle of card and stick him on there, or you can use a little egg stand like this one. You can use the really thick glue again to glue him in position. Normally we would use something called an epoxy glue, which is a glue which has two different parts. One part's a hardener and one part's the gluey bit. And when you mix the two together, they become very, very strong. But I think what we'll do for now is we'll just put Robin onto the stand using the thick glue. And we'll stick him there, like so. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed watching me make Robin. I'm sure that you'll think of all sorts of other things that you can do, and we'll come back in a little while and we'll perhaps have a go at making Maid Marian or Friar Tuck. I'll have to decide which one I want to do first. I think Friar Tuck's my favourite though. He looks so cute and cheeky. Alright, well thank you for watching this part of the video, and we'll look forward to seeing you again. Bye for now. Well, now that we've made Robin Hood, we're going to have a little go at making Friar Tuck. Friar Tuck is absolutely my favourite little character. He's just so cute with his little bald head. That poses a problem though, the little bald head, because most of the eggs have got a hole in the bottom. So what I've done is I've taken the tiniest little bit of micropore tape or bandage tape, and I've just torn off a piece and just put it over the top, so when I come to put the next coat of paint on, which we'll do now, so that I can get that finished off quickly and it can dry while I'm explaining the other bits that we'll need. So if you remember, we just turn the egg to try to get the straight line, the head. There we are. So this is the second coat of paint going on, just like we did for Robin Hood. And you'll barely notice that there's a little piece of tape over the top of that hole. Okay, so what we'll now do, let's just go over that again. That's better. So what we'll now do is pop that to dry, and then we'll go through all of the bits that we're going to need for Friar Tuck. So just as we had for Robin, we have some of the thick brown wool, the chunky wool. Not quite as much for him because his hair's very, very short and there's a great big bald patch in the middle. We'll also have some lighter brown cord or rat tail satin, whatever you want to use, just to go around the edge of the neck, and his little waistband, the dangly bits there that will hang down. Now in his hands, again you're going to cut some little tiny hands from card, so 2 of those. I've also used a tiny little piece of black leather. Now if you haven't got any black leather, this is for the Bible by the way, just use a piece of black card or even white card and paint it black. It's not so difficult. The tiniest little piece of flat gold braid, which you're going to cut to make a little cross to go on front of the Bible. And then let's just see what else we had. Oh yes, he has a little cross just hanging from his belt, and that's using either the braid that you used for this piece or some other braid. It's, you know, just something thin and flat preferably. And of course the little stand that we almost forgot last time, flesh coloured paints and dark brown paints. Okay, so we've got the flesh coloured paint drying there, and before we do the dark brown paint, I think we'll wait for that to dry for a little bit longer, and while we're waiting we'll just make the little Bible. So this is the tiniest little piece of leather, and what I'm going to do is just take a very small amount of the gold braid, I'm going to cut a tiny piece, about that size should do it, and then I'm going to put a little bit of glue. It's easier possibly to just glue onto the leather, so I'll just take the little bit of glue there. If you've got tiny fingers you shouldn't have a problem with this, but if you're somebody who's got bigger hands like mine, then you may find it's a lot easier to use a pair of tweezers, but I think we can manage with that. Okay, so that's the first bit of the cross. So then we take, now the cross section is a little bit shorter, so what I'm going to do is just, that's going to go up a bit from centre and it's going to be much shorter. So let's just chop that level before we start. So that's straight. And then this time I'm going to pop a little bit of glue onto the cord. Just a tiny bit. I think it'll be, oops, that slipped. Wasn't very clever, was it? That's better. Now, which side did I glue? That side. Okay, so I'm just going to pop that on there. Let's try again, because I think the glue's set. Depending on which glue you're going to use, you need to sometimes work quite quickly. So that's that way, and that will go on there, and then just snip off the end. There we go. And there's your little cross on the Bible. So that's going to sit in his hand. You may find, depending on how big you've made it, you might find you need to just snip a little bit off the edges there just to make it slightly smaller. But that will do for that little bit. Okay, let's have a look at the paint and see if that's dried. No, it's still quite shiny, so I'm going to go and dry that with my hairdryer. Remember I told you before that you can always dry the paint using a hairdryer. Alright, let's go and do that now and come back to you. So now we have the flesh colour dried, we're going to pop on some dark brown. Now you need to be a little bit careful with this. This paint's quite thick. Going to very carefully turn the egg, just trying to get that in a fairly straight line. Now all of this is going to show because Friar Tuck doesn't have long hair. So let's just pop that round there. This is actually covering really, really well, so we may not even need 2 coats of paint on this. It depends very much on the paint that you're using, but usually the kind of paints that you can pick up in craft stores, acrylic paints are the best ones. These should cover quite well with 1 or 2 coats. Nearly there. Okay, almost done. There, wonderful. That should sort him out, do you think? I do. Right, so that's that done. I'm going to go and dry that quickly and then come back to you, and I think the next bit we do, excuse me, is to put his hair on. So now not Robin, I'm getting confused here. Now Friar Tuck is ready to have his hair applied. So what I'm going to do is just do a little circle around the area, just all the way around, just to help me with as a guideline for putting the hair on. There we are. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is take the brown wool, and I've folded it in half, so I've got 2 loose ends here, and I'm going to use it 2 pieces at a time so that I can get everything glued on more quickly. So the first thing is to find that really tacky glue again and put some down onto the egg. Here we go. And we're going to use quite a bit all the way around. This time we don't have to worry too much about covering up his face, because his haircut is the same all the way around. Let's just get some more glue. We can always glue the little bits down if we need to afterwards. But as long as we've got a fairly straight line going around the head, we should be okay. I think maybe I left this glue out in the air too long. It's gone really, really thick. Okay, and just move everything down a tiny, tiny bit. Okay, there we are. You can see how much glue I've put on there. So now we need, just putting the lid on the paint in case I knock it over. So there's my 2 little lengths of wool. I'm going to pop those together into the glue. And then I'm going to snip. I think about that much should be enough. I'm going to do that all the way round. Mind you don't get your fingers in the glue on the other side of the egg as you're holding it. And you can always give him a little bit of a haircut afterwards as well if you need to, if it looks a little bit long in places. Oop, there we go. If it lifts off, just push it down again. Tell it to behave itself. There we go. You might find you need a little touch more glue underneath, but we'll do that afterwards. Let's just see how we go on with this. of course, Friar Tuck was the character that made sure that everybody did as they were supposed to do in Sherwood Forest, and he reminded them about being kind to other people and things like that. All the things that as a monk he believed in. That's better. Let's just pop that there. I don't think we can, or maybe we could do the loopy bit with this. Let's try. Just see if it'll work more quickly. No, I don't think so, because I haven't looped it short of. Let's just trim that again. I don't think looping it's going to be such a great idea. Let's go back to doing the two pieces at the same time. And of course Robin Hood, when he was in Sherwood Forest, he used to rob from the rich and give to the poor people, because he thought that some of the people who were in the town of Nottingham, especially the Sheriff of Nottingham, had way too much money, and they kept taking the money from the poor villagers that lived in the area. So Robin Hood, when they were travelling back to their castle with lots and lots of money that they'd taken from the villagers, Robin Hood used to ambush them and take the money, and then he'd give it back to the people that it had been stolen from in the first place. There we are. Almost there. That's it. Oops. Of course, Maid Marian has a completely different hairdo. And we'll maybe look at that in a little while, but let's just finish off Friar Tuck first, which won't take very long. You'll have to try to think of some other characters that you can do using this same method. Think of maybe some other characters from stories from the past, or let me think, fairy stories, or even characters from history, such as, oh, I know what you could do. You could do Henry VIII and his 6 wives. That would be different, wouldn't it? But you'd need to get 7 duck eggs together for that one. So there we are. That's almost, yes, that's done. Now, have I left enough room for his little face? Perhaps not, so we'll trim that back a tiny bit. Make sure it's nice and even. There we are. Just give that a... That's it. Right, so the next bit is going to be applying his belt. So again, we'll use the really sticky stuff. And I'm going to go all the way around. My glue's not coming out properly. Let's just clean that up a little bit. That's because it's been sitting there for a little while and I forgot to put the pin in the top. There we are, it's coming out now. And pop that down into the glue. If you need to hold this steady while you're putting the glue on so that you can work with both hands, you could even use the egg box that the eggs came in, because that's really handy. Alright, nearly there. That's it. And pull that, you pull it tight when you're holding it to go round. You'll find that makes it nice and neat. And then sharp scissors again, snip that off. Now, where is the best place to put his, I think we'll have his face there. So what we need to do now is have two little pieces coming down here, which will be like the loose ends of his belt. Because if you remember, Friar Tuck had what we call a habit, which is the robe that he wears. Whoops. And that's like a huge t-shirt almost, which reaches down to the ground. And it's tied around the middle with a cord, or like a little belt. So that's what we're going to do here. So we're going to have one end shorter than the other. We're going to pop that one on there. That's it. Okay. And then, oh, snip that off. There we are. So that's that bit done. Now, we need a cross again. So we'll take a little bit of cord, and this time we're going to cut the little piece. There we are. Just going to cut that to make a little cross. So one little bit like so, a little bit of glue in the middle, or just above middle, and then we can put that across like so. Oops, that's it. Hold that firmly while it sticks. A little bit of wool there stuck on my fingers. There. And then that, whoops, that was clever. Not supposed to stick to your fingers, Linda, it's supposed to be sticking to itself. Right, now I've gone and dropped it. Let's pick that up. That's the trouble with these little fiddly things. They fall over for fun. So now what I'm going to do is pop some glue across the back of it and hope that I can get that in position hanging from the end of Friar Tuck's belt. There we go. That's what I was trying to do. Now, I've not painted the hand yet, so let's very quickly, I think they need to be painted a flesh colour. So let's pop him down for a second. While I get the hands painted, you can be thinking about what's next to do. Well, here we are back again, and we'll pop Friar Tuck there. And let's find his hands. I've now just popped a little coat of paint on them. So now I can get these glued into position. So again, we're going to be using the really sticky stuff. And let's just move that back a wee bit. And then we can pop one hand here. Just press that down gently to hold it. And then I need 2 pairs of hands here. Let's just pop some glue again on the back of that hand, and then lift him up again and pop that hand on the other side. Okay, now before we give him his Bible, we need to get the face on, and I've not really left a lot of room for the decals here, so perhaps we should look at drawing the face on with a marker pen. So let me have a look and see if I can find one. There we go. Let's see if we can make a decent face with this. So yeah. So what I've got here is a fine black marker pen, and I'm going to draw an oval. So sometimes it's a bit difficult to draw actually onto a painted finish. And then another one on the other side, like so. Now, remember what I said to you before about leaving a little dot in the middle? So we're going to give him a great big black. I'm going to do a little circle there before I start to colour in. There we are. So now it looks as if he's actually looking at something. Okay, so we'll do the same on the other eye. So another, whoops, see what I mean about sometimes it doesn't really want to work terribly well. There we are. Just colour in. I think what I'll do with this is, let me just make that one a little bit bigger so that it matches the other one, and then I'm going to get some white paint. I'm going to do the little dot in white paint so that it'll look a bit better. So let me go and find my white paint, and then I'll come straight back. So while I was looking for my white paint, I looked for my red pen as well. I used to have a very, very thin red pen, but I can't find that today either. So let's just put the little dot using my really, really fine paintbrush. There we are, that's better. And now I'm going to try and paint the mouth. So let's just wipe the white paint from the brush and take the tiniest little bit of red paint. Can you just see it on the tip of the brush there? And then we'll give Friar Tuck a nice little smile. There we are. The happiest monk in Sherwood Forest. So now we'll pop him down for 1 second. Just wash my brush. Don't forget, whenever you're using paint, you need to wash your brushes fairly quickly. Otherwise the paint gets all stuck inside, and the next time you come to use them, if you're painting something white and you've been using a brush with black paint, you'll find you've got a really messy white colour that's almost grey. So make sure that your brushes are well washed out properly. I'm just going to screw the lids on my paint so I don't knock those over. And now we've got Friar Tuck ready to hold the Bible in his hand. So all we need now is a little bit of glue on the back of there. And we can tuck that underneath his hand there. So now he's all ready to go off into the forest to teach everybody about God and the Bible and everything else that he likes to talk about. Again, we can just pop him a little bit of the thick glue on here, and then he can sit onto the stand. So let's just do that very quickly. If you remember, I suggested that if you can't use a two-part glue, an epoxy glue, that you use the thick tacky. And just fill the little cup on the egg stand with the glue, so that when you put this little fella, have the two legs at the front so they look almost like feet. There we are. So that is Friar Tuck, and those are our two Robin Hoods as well. So now we've just got one more character to do, and that is Maid Marian. Now, Maid Marian was somebody who was, I think she was the niece of the Sheriff of Nottingham. I'm sure you probably know who she was. And he wasn't very nice to her, so she ran away to Sherwood Forest, and she started to live with Robin Hood and all the rest of the outlaws. But because she was once very, very royal, shall we say, she has to have some very pretty clothes. So she's got some really fancy braiding on her dress, and she has this pretty headdress as well, which is actually quite simple to make. So let me show you how to do that. I'll just get all of the bits and pieces together for it so that I can show you. So our next project is Maid Marian, and we'll have a look at all of the bits and pieces now that we need to make her. So again, we have the duck egg, and we're going to prepare the duck egg in exactly the same way as we did the others. So I have to admit though, I had an accident. I was painting the flesh paint on one of my eggs, and what happened was I dropped it on the floor, so I've got to start all over again. Anyway, I've now painted one with the flesh paint, so that's ready to have the next lot of paint on. But let's talk first about the materials that we need to do this with. So the first thing is the hair, which is the thick yellow wool, very similar texture and finish to the brown one that we used for the other two. And we also need some fancy braid, and that's going to go around the top of her head and around here. Now it doesn't go all the way round because it's hidden by her headpiece. All right, now this piece is called panne velvet, but any sort of pretty shiny material will do, as long as it's nice and thin. Now this piece, I've already got that cut to size, and I used a piece, let me just measure that. I've used a piece which measures, let's see, 7 inches by 3 inches, or if you're doing it in centimetres, that's about 8 centimetres by 18. Alright, so that's your little piece of fabric. You'll need a needle and thread, you'll need the flesh coloured paint again. Now I've used a dark red metallic paint for her dress, but you use whatever you have handy. We'll need a pair of hands again, and if you notice, she's holding in her hand a little gold dagger to protect herself in the forest. So we'll need some gold card, and from the gold card I've cut a little dagger or sword shape. There we are, so that's nice and shiny. And of course you'll need the stand to pop her on, and the glues. Did I mention the needle and thread? If not, I'll mention it again. A needle and thread. And I've just used a white thread which has got double thickness of thread in it, just ordinary white sewing thread. Okay, so we'll start with the egg, which I've already, let's pop her there with the rest of the merry men. I've lost my egg. What have I done with my egg? There it is. Okay, so here's my egg. I now need the red paint, so let's open that up. And we'll see how many coats of this we'll need. We might get away with one, but I think it's probably going to be 2 coats. So again, we'll have, oh yes, definitely 2 coats. Some paint is really, really thick and covers almost immediately. Some paint is much, much thinner. But it's much better to apply thin coats, and a few of them, than it is to try and cover it all in one go. The only problem is with a paint that doesn't cover very, very thickly is I'm going to have to go off and use my hairdryer again just to dry it off so I can apply another coat. At least it's quick, that's one good thing. Alright, so I'll go and do some more painting, get another coat of paint on after I've got this one dry, and then we'll see what happens next. Well, as you can see, this is a much nicer finish now, but do you know how many coats of paint I had to put on? Not 2, but 3 altogether. That's because it's a metallic paint and it was just a lot thinner than the other stuff that I'd used. Right, so the first thing we're going to do is make her hair, and that's going to be quite simple to do because it is short lengths of the hair again, and it's going to be hidden a lot by her veil. So this is the only area on the top where it's going to show. So let's just very lightly pencil in a circle. Let's do it like this. There we go. Turning the egg, just like we did with the paintbrush. Keep your hand steady and turn the egg. And with any luck, the pencil line will join up at the other end. Right, so that's that. Now then, we need the thick glue again. I'm going to see if I've got some that's a little bit runnier than the one I was using before. Ah, that's better. This is the same glue, but it's the bottom of another pot, which was difficult to reach with the toothpick, but it's much more fluid and it moves around a lot more easily. So what I'm going to do is cover all of the top bit where we left it open for Friar Tuck. This is the bit that we need for Maid Marian. There, that should do it. Now then, I'm going to take the hair, and again we can start at the top and then loop. Now, because everything meets in the centre, what I'm going to do is leave a gap between the loops, or in the middle of the loop, and we can fill that in with some short lengths of wool. There we are. Nearly done it. Okay, one more loop. That's it. That was quick, wasn't it? Right, where's my sharp scissors again? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill up the loops with some more wool and just snip it. There we are. Another bit there. Oops, there's a bit in between them there. So we'll pop some more wool in that bit there. I'm going to tidy up the middle bit in a minute. I just want to get all of the loops filled in first. Just push it down into the glue, make sure it's sticking. There we go. Let's just see if I've missed anything. Little bit there, I think. Only need a tiny bit just to fill the gap. And again there. There we are. I'm just going to give her a little trim on the top, just to remove any of the bulk. There we are. How about that? Okay. If I wasn't going to put headgear on her, I think what I might do is have her with really long hair and plait it so that, braid it so that she's got long, what we call pigtails. So let's pop that there for now. Pop that to the side, and we're going to now do the headgear. So because this fabric can fray at the edges and go a bit fluffy, what I'm going to do is on the short sides and one long side only, I'm just going to run a line of glue. Let me just clear that nozzle again. There it comes. So a line of glue along the short end and fold it over so that you don't have a raw edge on the fabric. I'll have to put this down just to press down onto it, just to hold it steady while it sets. And then I'm going to do exactly the same thing on the long edge. So again, I'll have to pop this down on the table. And all I'm doing is putting a long line of glue all the way along that long edge. Fold it over and hold it down while it sets, so that we have another nice neat edge. This doesn't want to hold in position terribly well, so let's give it a good squeeze. You just have to be a little bit patient sometimes with things, but it does give a nice neat edge. And then on the other short edge, going to do exactly the same thing. So a line of glue, and then fold over to hold everything in position. Oops. Of course, if you really wanted to, you could stitch this. But we're doing this quickly for now, and not everybody likes sewing at the end of the day. So there we are. Now then, I just want to measure that against Maid Marian to see whether we need it any shorter. So if I hold that against her, that's going to come to about there where my thumb is. I think we need to chop some fabric off. So let's take about maybe ½ an inch and trim that off. So let's get that done quickly, all the way over. This raw edge on this long side is going to be hidden by the braiding, so I'm not too worried about turning this edge over. And what we're going to do is we're going to gather it up, because as you can imagine it's way too long to wrap around her head, but we want it to look as if it's neatly gathered. That's that. So what we're going to do now is take our needle and thread, and we're going to knot it at the end, and then we're going to go in at the top of the short edge, and then we're going to just wriggle it in and out with what's called a gathering stitch. And the reason it's called a gathering stitch is so we can gather it. See, it's just a little stitch running along the edge, and then once that's done, it doesn't have to be too tiny a stitch. As I said before, it's just going to be hidden by the braiding around the top of her headgear. There we are. So now I've got my stitch all the way around. I'm going to take Maid Marian, I'm going to hold the edge of it against her head, and I'm going to just pull gently so that it's actually going to wrap around her head in neat little gathers. I think that's going to be long enough. That looks long enough to me. Now, I'm not too worried about the gathers being even at the moment. What I want to do is make sure, let's pop her down again, that I've at least got the right length of fabric. So I'm just going to take a couple of tiny stitches at the end. I'm going to be careful that I don't pull on those stitches that I've just made. Just a couple of little stitches over and over just to secure the thread. Let's snip that off. And then what I can do is I can even out all of those stitches so that they're a little bit more level, like so. Okay, and that has to glue around her head. Now, which glue do I use? Do I use the real thick stuff, or do I use the stuff that sets quickly? I think I'm going to have to use the really thick stuff. So let me find a new toothpick. Oh, this one's longer, it reaches right to the bottom of the pot. So I can get hold of a lot of glue, and then I'm going to start by putting it onto the head, onto the hair like this. What I'm going to have to do is be very, very careful that I don't put glue too far around. So let me find some more in my pot. That's it. You can see what I mean about having to reach right to the very bottom. There's not much left in this one, but it's not as gunky as the other one. Is that a real word, gunky? Oh, well, it is now. Okay, let's find a little bit more glue. Right, now I'm going to leave it there simply because I don't want to go too far to the front. Oops, I've just moved her hair a wee bit, given her a side parting. Okay, now let's glue that down. So we'll start here, and then we'll carefully take the fabric, push it into the glue. Whoops. Oh, I didn't put on anywhere near enough glue, which is good because it means that I haven't got any bits sticking out that are all gluey and horrible. So now I know how much more I can put on. And just to be on the safe side, I'm going to actually put it onto the fabric so that I don't end up with glue all over her forehead. Little bit more just on the end. Let's dive into the bottom of the pot to get it, and that should just about do it. Yes, there we are. So there's Maid Marian's headgear, and let's just trim that up nicely now. Now, I haven't stuck it down underneath simply because I want to put a line of the braiding across here. I don't need it all the way round, so I'm just going to move that out of the way for a second. I'm going to take my braid and the other glue this time. I'm going to start about half an inch in, going all the way along here. Putting quite a bit of glue on because it's a wide braid, so it needs to make contact with the glue along there, like so. Oops, takes a little while to stick this one because it's a heavy braid. There we are. Make sure that's held down firmly there, and then I can trim off. Just snip that so you can't see the ends. Look, it's much better that way. And then we're going to put another piece, and it's going to go all the way around the top, so it's going to actually hide these raw edges of the material. I think I can get away with using this glue again, so let's see what we've got left. Let's start at the back so that you don't see the join quite as obviously. I'm only going to glue about an inch down at a time because I know this is going to need a little bit of pressure to hold it in position. going to leave a little tiny bit of hair sticking out from underneath this band of decoration at the front, so that she looks as if she's got a little bit of a fringe. Yeah, that's what I thought. This is taking some time to stick. Maybe I should have used the other glue, but it doesn't matter now. We're stuck with this one. Oh, how terrible. Right, so now we're going to go across the front of the head. As I said, we'll just leave that little bit of a gap there so that it looks as if she has a fringe. I think you call those bangs in America, I'm not sure. I'm afraid, you know, in England we have different words to describe things than you do in America. There we are, that's nearly stuck. I think we're safe now to pop a little bit round the back, just so that the two ends meet, and then we can come out again with our sharp scissors and just trim off. Let's just pop that there, that's it. And there's a little bit of the braiding left, which we'll do for the trim on the front of her dress. So that actually comes down from the neckline. So let's just do a little line of glue down there. There we are. Hopefully that will stick a little bit better. It's very fancy, this braid. But then she is a very fancy lady. That's it. Now, that seems to have just about stuck all the way round. There we are. So she's nearly done. So before we put the hands on and give her a dagger to hold, we need to do her face. Now, I won't bother again with the decals this time round. What I will do, let's move her over. Let's just pop her in there for a second so I can find my other bits and pieces. So we need some eyes, but I'm not going to do full eyes like I did for the fellas. I'm going to do just a lid, the eyelid with some eyelashes on it, so it looks as if she's being very demure and looking downwards. Right, so what I'm going to do is a little half moon shape. So, and then I'm going to do another one on the other side, trying to make them the same size. And then we'll do some nice and girly eyelashes. There we are. Like so. Yeah, and the next thing we need is her mouth. Now I think I will do a oh, we forgot her eyebrows, so let's give her some eyebrows. And remember what I said to you before about how the eyebrows should be quite high up, because it makes them look a little bit friendlier. There we are. So she misses out on the eyeballs, but she gets eyebrows as well as eyes and eyelashes. So that's that. Now I I need my very, very fine brush again. I'm just going to pop her down for a second, find my fine paintbrush, find my pinky red paint, and then we'll give her a nice smiley mouth as well. Let's see if we can get this on nicely. There we are. All done. Okay, so that's that bit. Excellent, or should I say excellent? Perhaps I shouldn't. Okay, I'm just going to rinse my brush very, very quickly. Make sure that's nicely dried. And now for the hands. There's one hand. Where's my other hand? There it is. Whoops. Okay. So very quickly just paint over the hands so that they're the same colour as her face. Just make sure that brush is nice and dry. When you're using these acrylic paints, the ones that I've been using for these little figurines, you don't have to use water on your brush. In fact, it's probably better if you don't to start with. Obviously, if you've got to wash your brush out, you haven't got a lot of choice, but you can try to dry it off on something, maybe a bit of kitchen towel, so that you haven't got lots and lots of moisture on the actual brush when you're applying the paint. So that's that one. And somewhere I have, yep, there we are. We have another one, just a little coating of flesh paint. Whoops. There we are. Now, just blow that dry. When you're painting onto card, it does dry really, really quickly, which is good because we've nearly finished. And I want to get the hands glued on. So that's right. Where's Marian? Okay, so one hand can go there. So it's just tucking underneath that little band of decoration. And oh, where's the other one too? I'll just pop a little bit of glue on the other one now. There we are. So do you know who the other characters are in Robin Hood's story? Can you think of the other ones? Can you think how you could make them? What different accessories you can give them? Like Friar Tuck's got his Bible, Robin Hood has his bow, Maid Marian has her, there it is, her gold dagger. That's the next thing to put on. So again, a little bit of glue on the back. And then she's all ready for action in case the sheriff's men come and start fighting. So now she's got something to fight with. There we are. And if you want to, you can just pop a tiny bit of glue just on the edge of the headpiece to hold it down. You don't need to, but sometimes it sort of pops up a little bit more than you want it to. So just a tiny touch under there as well. And then just to finish her off completely, she can also go onto a little egg stand or a cardboard base. It depends on what you like. That's it, just move that sword down a fraction so that we can see her little face properly. And let's find the glue again. There we are. Oops. Oh, that wasn't very clever. Just knocked the camera flying. Okay, so let's just pop the glue into the middle of the egg cup section. And then we have Maid Marian all ready to join the rest of the outlaws in Sherwood Forest. And there seems to be rather a lot of them at the moment. So there we are. I hope you've enjoyed making these with me, and see if you can think of some other characters that you can make. Let me think, who else is at Sherwood Forest? There's Little John, there's Will Scarlet. You try and think of some more and see what you can come up with. I'd love to see what you make. Okay, thanks for sharing this with me. Bye now.